Hello and welcome to this month's Community for Food live cookery demo. Hope you're all well and enjoying the start of what is a bank holiday for most, so it's a good weekend and I hope you're looking forward to today's cookery demo. Today we're going to be cooking hot dogs with champ and gravy, so it's a proper sort of comfort food dish, and actually the weather's a bit miserable today, so it's perfect timing for it. Often a family favourite. I know it's a good one that kids tend to love as well. And with relatively few ingredients, we're going to make a hearty dish today. It's really filling and it's actually pretty healthy as well. I know hot dogs and gravy doesn't sound like the healthiest meal, but actually we've got some really good, nice sort of balance of ingredients here with our tatties and our carrots and our hot dogs. There's a nice balance of different proteins and fats and vitamins and all the rest of it. So actually it's quite a healthy meal. So I hope you're going to enjoy. Right, for those of you who are regulars and have been coming along to these cookery demos or watching them back for the last few months, then welcome, hello, thanks for joining again. You know the script, you probably know how it's going to run today. But for anyone who's new, just to give you a bit of a kind of setup of how the session is going to run today. I am going to cook the recipe at a fairly slow pace so you can cook along with me in your own time in your own kitchen. If you've got any questions or anything at all as we go, then you can ask them to me anonymously. There's a number on the back of the recipe card that you'll have received from Community for Food, which is, I'll just repeat it just in case you've not got the recipe card in front of you, 077 233 41919. So you can WhatsApp me on that number at any point during the cook along, or actually at any point, even if you're watching it back, you can message on that number. And during this cook along, I will answer your question anonymously, but through the video. So if you ask me something, I'll answer the question on the video so you can sort of hear the answer as you're cooking along. If you're watching it back, you can still get that support. Just message that number. I'll have that and be able to answer you via message to help you out if you need any support when you're cooking it in your own time. So please do use it. There's no question silly. Don't be shy. As I say, it's anonymous, so no one else is going to see your question. It might just be, slow down, can you repeat that? What's that green thing? Mine doesn't look like that, or anything like that. And that's absolutely fine. And no questions silly. And if you're thinking it, chances are somebody else will be as well. So don't be shy. Right, I think that's it in terms of the admin stuff at the beginning. Let's go through the ingredients, shall we? This is your opportunity to dig them all out. Hopefully you've got your pack from Community for Food that's got all the ingredients. If you've used anything already, or you've not got it, or you've got a substitute or something like that, then that's absolutely fine. And if you've got any questions for, I don't have that, what can I swap it with, then again, just message me on that number and I'll try my best to help you out and give you some suggestions of what you could use instead. So, ingredients. First thing that actually is critical to this, I suppose, is the hot dogs. And I've actually swapped them out. I'm vegetarian myself, so I've got myself some meat-free sausages instead. But any hot dogs will do, whether they're canned hot dogs, vac-packed hot dogs, or if you want to use sausages, like fresh sausages or frozen sausages, anything will do. So it's completely personal preference and what you've got in the house. But some sort of hot dog or sausage of some description is kind of the centerpiece of the meal. Then we've got some tatties. So any potatoes will do, whether it be, I've got some Maris Pipers, I think these ones are, but it could be any sort of type of potato or like baby new potatoes or anything like that, everything will work. Even if you don't have potatoes, and I know you will if because you've got the recipes, the ingredients from Community for Food this time around, but if you like this recipe and want to do it again in the future, you could even use like the packet potato mix if you don't have fresh potatoes. So there's always a solution. I've then got some carrots, 3 carrots. Sorry, just in terms of quantities, it was 8 hot dogs or sausages. You want 1 kilogram of potatoes, about 3 large carrots. I've got fresh here. They could be tinned, they could be frozen. It's completely up to you. I've also got some peas that's going to go along with that in terms of the veg. So I've got frozen here, but it could be frozen, could be canned, could be fresh, whatever you've got. And also, don't feel restricted to carrots and peas. If you hate carrots and peas, then don't use them. Use something else. You know, you could just use a bag of frozen veg or a can of tinned veg. Anything you've got is absolutely fine. So don't feel restricted by that. Then we've got a couple of leeks, and that is we're going to fry them off and mash them with the tatties to make the champ, and it makes it so tasty. Honestly, that is the best bit of this dish, if you ask me. So yeah, 2 large leeks. And then we've just got some milk, half a cup of milk, and that can be UHT, fresh milk, plant-based milk, whatever type of milk suits you, doesn't matter at all. I've got some salt there just for the tatties, and then I've got some olive oil to cook the leeks in. I've got the spray stuff here, which I think you guys got delivered at the start of the program, so you might have that, or you might have regular cooking oil. Either is absolutely fine. And then last but not least, some gravy granules. I've actually got some onion gravy granules here. I thought they'd be quite interesting to try out. But if you want to use beef gravy granules or chicken gravy granules or veggie gravy granules, whichever one suits you, completely up to you. So that's our ingredients. Just quickly before I get into cooking, just the equipment. Don't need anything fancy, but you will want a large pan for your tatties to boil in, a small pan for your veggies, and a large frying pan to fry off the leeks and to cook the sausages in. And then you'll need a potato masher, a spatula to sort of flip your sausages and stuff, and a knife and some measuring spoons. And that is it. Right, that's a whistle-stop tour. Hopefully you've managed to pull your ingredients out of the fridge or bag, and we're gonna get cooking. Okay, right. First things first, we are starting with our tatties. So if you keep them, I'm going to keep them on the side dish here, and we're going to prep them. Oh, try not to spill the milk. No use crying over spilt milk, eh? Oh, and a colander or a sieve. That was the other thing for the equipment. But if you don't have one, you can always use the pan lid, and that's not the end of the world either. So don't fret if you don't have a colander. Right. So, for the potatoes, first things first, get a large pan of water and get it on to the boil. So, there we go. I'm going to get that onto a high heat and put about, you don't need to be precise with this, but about a teaspoon of salt in there to cook your potatoes in. There we go. Maybe a slight bit more. Teaspoon and a half of salt. And pop the lid on there to get that to bring to the boil quicker. Now, for your tatties, take a look at them. And it's kind of default, I think, that we always peel our potatoes. And actually, you really don't need to. There's a lot of nutrients and goodness in the potatoes. If you've got any bad bits like this, then you obviously want to cut them off. And cut them off so that you're not getting any of it left in the potato. So we've got that bad bit off. If there's any sort of gnarly bits that you don't like the look of, that bit doesn't look amazing, but it's not too bad. That one looks all pretty good. Looks pretty good too. Got a bit of a funny looking bit there. That one looks all good. Yeah, these are pretty good. If your potatoes are a bit older, they might have started to grow. You know how they grow those, like, I think you call them eyes, the bits that sort of grow out of them. You want to cut them off, but they're still absolutely edible. So don't worry too much. Give them a good wash. I've already washed these. I don't have a sink in my little cook-along corner here. So give them a good wash. Cut off any gnarly bits, and then we're just going to chop them. So the size, we're boiling them and then mashing them, so it doesn't really matter. The only thing is to make sure they're relatively even, so that they cook at the same time. So I'm going to chop these fairly small. I think I might do these into quarters. And that's just so they cook fairly fast. Because we're cooking along live today, I don't want to spend the majority of the cook along boiling potatoes, because that's not very exciting, is it? So I'm going to cut them fairly small, but it doesn't really matter so long as they're all evenly sized and going to cook around the same time. You see, when I'm chopping my potatoes here, same thing applies, and I think I've said this in another cook along. Your first chop, then get it on the flat edge to make the rest of the chops easier, because then you've got a flat edge and it's not rolling around the chopping board. There we go. These tatties are all relatively similar sizes, so I'm just doing the same. I'm sort of halving it and then quartering it. But if you've got, tatties can come in all crazy shapes and sizes. So if yours are particularly different in size, then you might want to give some of them some extra cuts to make them the same size as the rest. If they're all different sizes, they'll just cook at different times. Then you'll have some that are going to mush and some that are still hard. Okay. There we have it. Now, my pan of water isn't boiling yet, but that's okay. As it's coming to the boil, I'm just going to add my potatoes. Just add them in there, and then bring that to the boil. Oh, there we go. You can, if you sweep them off the chopping board straight into the pan, you'll probably end up with water splashing everywhere, which is why I'm being a little bit gentler and doing it with my hands. You can also put the potatoes in the pan first and then cover with water and then bring to the boil, which is probably the more sensible way to do it, but you just buy yourself a little bit of extra time by doing it this way because your water's got a head start in coming to the boil. Right, now once these come to the boil, it will then take about 20 minutes for your potatoes to cook from there. 15 to 20, depends on the size you've chopped them into. So that's why we've got the potatoes on first, because they take a wee bit of time to make. So let them come to the boil. Keep an eye on them, keep a side eye on them whilst we prep our carrots. Our leeks, sorry. Because we don't want them to boil over whilst we're prepping our leeks. So leeks, depending on where you've got them, will either be nicely chopped and look quite neat and tidy at the ends like this, or they'll have wild splaying ends that are quite difficult to wash and get the dirt out of. So in each of these layers, there tends to be some sort of dirt lying in those layers, like you can see there. I've actually already washed this one and thought I got it all out, but it's quite hard sometimes to get it all out. So what I do, and what I'd recommend you do, is before washing them, or give them a rinse, and then slice it vertically. So from the root of the leek all the way to the top, slice it vertically like that. And then take that and rinse it under the tap to get all, and sort of like splay out the layers of the leek like that to get all those dirty, soily bits washed out of the layers of leek. You want all of them gone, otherwise you get this sort of grittiness in the leek because you've got these bits of soil lurking in there. So if you chop them horizontally like that, and then bring them over to the sink and give them a good rinse. Like I say, I've already rinsed these. There are a few bits lurking, but I don't have a sink here, so I'm not going to be able to rinse them again myself. But we'll give you the time now to just go and rinse them under the tap and get rid of any of that soily bits. So if you do that now, and then come back to me once you've rinsed your leeks. Remember to keep one eye on your potatoes. Mine aren't boiling just yet. Depends how much water you've got in the pan as well. You don't want to put too much, you sort of just want to cover the potatoes and a wee bit more, not fill the pan to the brim, otherwise it just takes ages for it to boil. That was probably a pertinent thing to say whilst you were filling your pan of water, but never mind. Right, now hopefully you've got your leeks all nicely rinsed. Now all we're going to do is, if you do have ones that have got massive splaying bits and they're all sort of frayed and not very nice looking, then you can just chop them off and then start from about this point where you've still got some greens, but it's not the bit that's all sort of tired and kind of a bit more fibrous, if you know what I mean. So like these ones, I might chop off these top bits, but this one here looks okay. So then what we're going to do when they're sort of sitting on their flat edge again is using a knife, chop into sort of 1/2 centimetre slices. So then you've got these kind of half semicircle or just semicircle shaped bits of leek. And just chop that all the way down the leek, both of the leeks. If you've got a big knife, it's easier with a big knife, but if you've got a smaller knife, then just do each half individually. Don't worry about it being overly neat, but because these are going to get mashed in with the potatoes anyway, so it doesn't matter if they're not perfect half moons or anything, because nobody will see it. Okay, and then just discard those end bits. Sorry, that's the root of the leek, so you see that bit's quite hard. So just discard that when you get there. And watch your fingers, don't cut too close. Okay, right. Next one. So yeah, if you've got any bits like this, you may want to get rid of any of the bits that are sort of not looking quite as nice, or that bit's looking a bit dirty. But other than that, you can eat most of this part of the leek. Again, just cut into sort of 1/2 centimetre slices all the way down the leek. Makes a lovely chopping noise, doesn't it? It's quite satisfying. If you only have one leek, then you can absolutely just use one leek for this recipe as well. Or if you don't have any leeks, but you've got some spring onions, you could add some spring onions rather than the leeks. Or chives are pretty good in here as well. Anything of the sort of onion family. You could even just fry up some onion and add that to the mashed potato. So anything oniony and green is perfect. And then when you get to the end again, you don't want the root in there. Just be careful of your fingers. There we go. Whew, that felt like quite a lot of work. Let me know if you're keeping up, if you want me to slow down or anything. Then please do just shout. Right, how are our tatties coming along? They're nearly coming to the boil. I'm just going to not take the lid off because I think they're just about there, and that'll just slow them down. So, next up, get your frying pan. You want a decent sized frying pan and put it on to a medium-high heat. And then into that, put your 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I've put in the recipe, but if you do have this spray rather than cooking oil, then just give it a really good spray so the whole base of the pan is really covered, because the leeks take a wee bit of time to cook, so we don't want them to stick to the bottom of the pan, so you want to make sure there's a nice coating of oil on the bottom of the pan there. There we go. That will do. And then to that, we're going to add our leeks. When you were cutting your leeks, if you thought, oh no, I found actually there's quite a bit of soil sort of hidden in here that I didn't wash out, you can just put them, once they're chopped, put them in a colander and then rinse them again. So if you, as you were chopping there, you thought, oh God, actually there's still quite a lot of dirty bits here that I didn't get when washing them, then pop them in the colander and rinse them through with water again, and you should be able to get rid of all that stuff. Right, that's our tatties boiling. So I'm going to turn them down to a simmer and let them simmer away for 20 minutes. So if your potatoes are boiling, then turn them down to a, I'd say what do you call it? I was going to say generous simmer, vigorous simmer. Basically, you just want to make sure they're not boiling out of the pan. So turn them down to a vigorous simmer and let them cook away. Right, so you can hear the leeks sizzling away there as well, which is lovely. That wonderful, rich green colour. We don't need to add anything to this pan, it's just the oil and the leeks, and they will saute away. And the colour, like, they'll become an even more vibrant green colour. It's beautiful, and they'll start to smell lovely. So just make sure they're all covering the base of the pan and they're not just sitting in a big clump. And just let them do their thing at a sort of medium to low heat. There's quite a lot of time we've got now. We've got about 20 minutes for those potatoes to cook, so we've got plenty of time for those leeks to cook away as well. So let them sizzle away on their own. Right. Next up, get your hot dogs, sausages, or whatever you're using, out of the pack, out of the can, out of the vac pack, whatever you have them in. And then what we're going to do is, if you've got hot dogs, then they are normally cooked already. So you're not cooking them so much as just reheating them. So there's no risk of them not being cooked through or anything like that. So that's not too much of a worry. And what we're going to do, we're going to cook them with the leeks. We're just going to give the leeks a bit of a head start and get them to sort of saute off. And then once they are starting to wilt away and look nicely cooked, we're going to sweep them to one side of the pan and put the hot dogs on the other side to let them cook away. So just a bit of time here to let everything get started and start cooking. Okay. And then once we've got the hot dogs in, we'll start cooking our veg. So that will take varying amounts of time depending on what you're cooking. So I'm cooking fresh carrots, so they take a wee bit of time. But if you're just doing frozen veg, that's pretty quick. So hopefully everyone's keeping up and understanding my gibbering away here. Look at the colour of those leeks. Don't they look good? Really vibrant green. And they're starting to smell amazing as well. I'm just moving them around here so they don't stick to the bottom of the pan. And you want these leeks almost, you want them almost overcooked so that they disintegrate into the mash really nicely. If they're not cooked enough, then they'll sort of feel a little bit stringy perhaps within the mash. So you want to make sure they're really nicely cooked and soft. Okay. And they're starting to look good. Excellent. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to shimmy them over to one side of the pan. They'll carry on cooking there. I'm not saying this is them as cooked as we want them to be, but they'll carry on cooking over on that side of the pan there. We're just making space so we can pop our hot dogs, sausages, or whatever you have, onto the other side of the pan. We're just going to pop them down. I'm just using my fingers. You can use utensils if you like, but sometimes I think when you're cooking, it's easier just to get stuck in there with your fingers. There we go, pop them out. Like I say, hot dogs will already be cooked, so there's no worry about putting sort of raw meat in with your cooked leeks here. And these are veggie ones, so whilst they're not cooked, they're veggie, so there's no risk of anything sort of being contaminated or anything like that. So all good. And then just, pop those leeks over. You want to agitate them every now and again so they don't burn on the bottom of the leeks and then they're not really cooking on the top. So just let them do their thing over there, and then make sure your sausages aren't sticking to the bottom of the pan there. So just kind of periodically slide them around with a spatula like that to make sure they're cooking okay. And then after sort of 5 minutes, we'll turn them over so that they're brown on the other side. They'll start browning on that side there. So we'll let them do their thing. Keep it at a sort of medium-low heat. Tatty's boiling away. Next, let's prep our veg for cooking. So if you've got fresh carrots, what I do is top and tail them. So just cut the top and the bottom off, like that. Just a little bit. I think sometimes when you're topping and tailing your carrots, you tend to take off a massive chunk like that, and then you lose a bit of the carrot. So just the very top and very tail, take them off. And then give them a good wash under the tap, and wash off any, you know how you sometimes get those sort of hairy bits coming out of the carrots? Wash off any of them, wash off any dirt to make sure they're really nice and clean. I've already done that with these ones. You can see as I'm going over them again, I can find in extra little hairy bits, but give them a good wash. And again, I'm going to recommend you don't peel them. You absolutely can peel them. I've got my peeler here in case sort of any gnarly bits that you want to peel off, but you don't have to peel them. And actually peeling them, it's extra effort, takes away some of the taste, and actually it takes away some of the nutrients as well. So if you've got the opportunity, just remember, think, actually, do I need to peel these or should I just eat the skin? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is just eat the skin because it's delicious and nutritious. Right, I'm going to chop these into, you can chop them any way you like. You can get creative and do them sort of diagonally, or you can just chop them into sort of rounds like that. And I would do them sort of about, again, similar width to the leeks, about 1/2 centimetre. Just chop them like that. And then we'll just watch your fingers at the end there. Or you can go this way and chop them diagonally. I personally prefer doing them this way, but I think that's just because I'm pretending to be posh. They look a bit posher that way. But it doesn't change the flavour of them whatsoever. So do them whatever way you please. You get a bigger chunk of carrot this way as well, which I quite like, but it's completely up to you. Rounds or diagonals, whichever suits you best. Or pre-chopped and canned or frozen is, do you know, it's also equally as nutritious. I think canned and frozen vegetables sometimes get a bit of a bad reputation, but actually there's just as many nutrients in them. And in some cases, they are even more nutritious because they're frozen or canned at the time that they are at their best. So sometimes they can be even more nutritious. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with frozen or canned veg. Now, just heading back to our frying pan here to move around the leeks to make sure they're not burning on the bottom. So make sure you give them a good move around the pan. As I said, you kind of want these to be what you might think as overcooked because you want them to be really nice and soft for mashing in with the potatoes. So these are looking brilliant. There we go. Give them a good mix around. Any bits that are browning like that, make sure you get them onto the top so they don't burn. Fabulous. And then you want to turn your sausages or hot dogs to make sure that the brown bit like that is at the top, and then you can brown the bottom bit, or what was the top bit. Get that onto the base of the pan so it starts browning. This can be a wee bit fiddly, but just a bit of patience and a spatula tends to do the job. If you've got tongs, then that works really well as well. Barbecue tongs even, they do the trick. There we go. And then we'll let them continue to cook on the other side for another 5 minutes. Turn that down to a sort of medium-low heat and just let that continue. Okay. Now, let's get these carrots cooking. So, small pan, about half full of water, and then just pop your carrots in. There we go. Or do it the other way and pop your carrots in and then cover them in water, whichever is easiest. I'm not going to put any salt in here or any sort of flavourings or anything like that because there's plenty flavour in the rest of the dish. So I'm just going to leave that as it is, carrots and water. Put the heat on underneath at a high heat and then bring that to the boil. Let me just move this pan around so it's steaming in my face here. Bear with me. There we go. Is that better? Okay, just move it around like that so it's not steaming everywhere. Is that better? Okay, so, just singed my towel off doing that. Okay, so you just, now with the carrots, cold water, carrots, heat underneath it, we're going to bring that to the boil, and then as soon as that starts boiling, we're going to reduce it to a simmer. And at that point, once it's reduced to a simmer, we shall add the peas to the water. You could cook these separately, but there's absolutely no point. We're going to put them on, if you want them in, I guess if you've got fussy kids who want to have, don't necessarily like to eat carrots and peas and want them separately on the plate, then you could cook them separately so you've got 2 separate piles of carrots and peas. But if you're not bothered about that, then you can absolutely just cook them in the same pan and then serve them together. Just add the peas after your carrots are nearly cooked, because the peas take seconds really to cook. Okay, and you know what? That's us pretty much ready to go. Now we're just waiting for the carrots, the potatoes to cook, and we've got to make our gravy, but we're in a pretty good place. So I shall check the potatoes, see how far off they are right now. They're boiling away fairly vigorously, so I'm just going to do a wee check. Actually, they're not far off. See, when your fork goes through like that, we'll take it over here. If your fork slides through like that, without any resistance, that's them cooked. You can see that one's almost breaking up already, so that's ideal. I always say it's worth checking two, because one, you might have just picked a small one. So check another one here. Fork glides through like that, then we're cooked. So I'm going to turn the heat off on them now. There we go. Yours may not be cooked already, because I think I was boiling quite fast there. So yours may still be a bit hard, in which case we'll continue them cooking until they're soft like that. Now, I'm going to drain them now, but I'm just smelling my leeks and wanting to give them a little turn, because they're starting to there we go. Turn your sausages again there. Brown on both sides, which is perfect. So they're looking good. The leeks are looking really cooked now, which is brilliant. As I said, you do want to sort of overcook these, so they're looking a little bit mushy. And then I'm going to turn the heat off on this now, because it's looking pretty well cooked. Okay, so then we're just going to set that aside, and then we'll come back to it. Meanwhile, time to drain the tatties. So like I say, if your tatties are not yet cooked, that is absolutely fine, but let them continue till they're sort of soft like that. I'm going to drain these now. I'm just going to do it off camera, so I don't create loads of steam. You can drain them over the sink, drain them in a colander, or use a sieve, whichever you have available to you. Okay, so drain them and then return them to the pan. So any excess water, and then just return them to the pan, and then we're going to mash them in that pan. Pop these two lonely ones out there as well. There we go. Okay. Now, pop this to one side. I don't need that just yet. I'm going to bring the potatoes over to the board so I can show you the mashing process. Because there's a few things that we're going to add to them to make these the most delicious potatoes you've ever eaten. So, mash them just as you would regular potatoes. You can do it quite roughly. We're adding things to these. We're adding the leeks to these. So these are never going to be like smooth, beaten mash. They're always going to have some texture to them. So the first mash right now, just give it a fairly rough mash. It doesn't need to be lump-free by any stretch. There we go. That is fine. Perfect. And now, add your leeks. So just spoon them in. That lovely greenness. It smells delicious. Spoon them in to the mash. Make sure you get all of it. Any that's hiding in between your hot dogs, make sure you get that out of the corners. There we go. Perfect. Ideal. Get any of the stragglers off there. Set your hot dogs to one side. and then mash that through. So again, just with the potato masher, give that a good mash. You're not going to mash out the texture of the leeks. You want that sort of texture throughout the mash. So just give it a good, put some elbow into it and give that a good mash down. And you see, you get this lovely greenness to your mash. There we go. Okay. Now, at this point, give it a taste. Sometimes quite difficult to guesstimate the amount of salt to put into your potatoes. And then you don't really know if you've got it right until they're cooked. And it kind of depends. Sometimes they absorb a bit more salt into them than others. So at this point, once you've got the leeks mashed into it, give it a wee taste. And if you think it needs it, then you can season it with some more salt and also some pepper if you feel necessary as well. Okay, there we go. Here we taste. I don't think that needs any salt. The flavour of the leeks in there just really makes it so good. So tasty. Right, so if you like your mash in this consistency, then you don't need to add milk. But I quite like to make the mash a little bit more sort of, a little bit less dry, I guess. So that's what the ½ cup of milk's for. Pour that in now. And then just mash the milk through, basically. Just gently, again with the potato masher, just continue to mash until that milk's all completely mixed through the tatties, and you see it's just got a bit more of a sort of moist consistency. And there we go. Oh, that looks good. That looks good. What do you think, guys? How are you getting on as you're starting to look like this? You might still be boiling. Like I say, I unintentionally cooked my potatoes quite fast there because they were on a big ring. So my simmer was more vigorous than usual, let's say. So yours may take longer than this to do. So if you're cooking along now and you're still boiling and wondering why, or if you're cooking back later and thinking mine aren't nearly cooked yet, then don't worry, I did go quite fast there. Another taste test, just because I can confirm they taste wonderful. So mash her out. I'm just going to put the lid on and set that to one side to keep warm whilst our carrots are cooking. So hopefully they are starting to come to the boil. They're not yet. Got too much variance in the size of my rings. I've got some that are massive and give so much heat, and then some that are tiny and give much less heat. So I'm actually going to move these onto the back to bring them on a bit faster. And I'm just going to keep these sausages on the small ring to just keep them warm, but they don't need any extra cooking. They're just sort of keeping warm there, along with the mash with the lid on, keeping that warm until we're ready to serve. So just bring those carrots up. Next up, which you don't want to do until you're just about to serve, is make the gravy. So we'll get that prepped and ready. That was had a bit of a active beginning there, where everything became ready at the same time, and now we've got a pause whilst our blooming carrots need to cook because they're still hard. The joys of cooking, it's all in the timing. And then what you can do right now whilst you're waiting is also boil the kettle, because that's what we need for the gravy granules. So I've boiled mine already, so I've got mine hot and ready to go. But if you get yours onto the boil, and then when it's ready, we can make the gravy granules. So, if you can pass me over the kettle, cameraman. pass me the kettle, please. So the gravy granules, it'll be completely different depending on which you have, and it'll have instructions on the back. Follow the instructions of your own specific gravy granules rather than following me, because they will all be slightly different, and it'll depend in terms of how, I guess, basically how salty they are in terms of how many it recommends in terms of tablespoons of water to teaspoons of granules to water. So this one says 4 heaped teaspoons, which is what I've got in the recipe, 20 grams of granules to half a pint of boiling water. So I'm just going to put that in the jug ready to go now. So 4 heaped tablespoons. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 heaped teaspoons. I said tablespoons. I did teaspoons. I read teaspoons. I'm not doing very well today, guys. I apologise. Hopefully you managed to keep along with my chaotic mind today. So that's 4 heaped teaspoons of gravy granules in there. And then we're going to add in half a pint of water. If I can see this correctly. Half a pint of water. There we go. So use your measuring jug and just fill that up to half a pint. If you've got a dog or a toddler or anything annoying cooking along with you, then I feel your pain. We just rescued a dog a couple months ago, and that was him making a guest appearance. He's still not the most obedient, so there we go. We've all got our challenges in the kitchen, don't we? And that's mine. A crazy collie dog that doesn't understand where and when he should go to bed. Okay, so all you want to do is once you've used your gravy granules, your water, stir it together, and then you can see it starts to make this lovely gravy consistency. Also, bear in mind what I said in terms of the quantities there for the gravy, in terms of 4 heaped teaspoons and half a pint of water. Make that up. If your family love gravy, you might want to make more, because I know myself with sausage and mash, gravy, I think gravy is part of the best bit, so I actually use quite a lot of gravy on mine. So feel free to double that or add some extra gravy granules to make that a wee bit more. Also, the thickness of gravy is very much a personal preference, so if you feel you want to add a bit more water or a bit less and make it thicker, then absolutely do that. So just stir, stir, stir. Make sure you really get the spoon around the outside of the jug so you don't have any granule bits left, and just give it a good old stir. And then I'm just keeping half an eye on the carrots there. They're slowly starting to come to the boil. Perfect. Okay, there we have it. Beautiful gravy consistency there. Okay, actually a few lumps in there. Let me just stir them out. Perfect, and then I'm going to set that aside. Don't make your gravy too much in advance of being ready to go, because or otherwise it will go cold. So make sure you've not. You can keep that hot. Right, so carrots are just about bubbling away there. So I'm going to add in the peas to the mix there. And then let them simmer for about 5 minutes, and then we're good to go. So this is a good point to do some dishes, tidy up, get yourself ready to settle down for a delicious Saturday evening sausage and mash delight. I'm just clearing the deck here, getting my plate ready for serving. There we go. Oh, I'm looking forward to this one. I love this recipe, absolutely love. Champ, just could have it with anything. I quite like to make, if I'm making sausage and mash, I quite like to make extra mash, extra champ, because it freezes really well. And actually, so what you can do if you do have, again, it depends on your household and what people like to eat the most of. If you've got some mash left over, then you can absolutely just put it in a Tupperware box and leave it in the fridge, and you can eat it for 2 days. Or you can freeze it, and it's actually totally fine, just frozen and then popped in the microwave for about 4 minutes, stir it, put it back in for another 4 minutes, and then it's absolutely fine eaten, reheated. And mash is a bit of a pain to make because you've got to boil potatoes and mash it. It does take a bit of time. So I quite like to make a little bit of extra mash and then use it another day. So top tip if you are a mash lover like me. Right, I'm just waiting for these carrots and peas to finish cooking, and then we're good to serve up. Any questions? Then now's a good time to pop them in. Or, like I say, please do, if you're watching this back, 'cause I think maybe quite a few of you will be watching it back another time, because I'm conscious that today is a bank holiday, so other people might have some bank holiday fun plans and not be tuning into my cook-along, which is absolutely fine and welcomed. But if you're watching this back another day, then please do, if you've got any questions, just put them to that number that's it's on the back of your recipe card, so you should have that, but I'll give it to you one more time just now, 077 233 41919. So if you've got any questions on this recipe, or if you've got any of the other recipe cards throughout the programme that you're cooking at home and you've got questions on, then you can ask me questions on any of the recipes by just messaging that number. And I won't promise I'll get back to you straight away, but I'll come back to you as soon as I can with any response I can, whether it's, like I say, you don't have one of the ingredients, what can you swap it out with, or anything at all, then please don't be shy. I'm here to sort of support you on cooking delicious, healthy meals. So reach out and get in touch. All right, I think that is my carrots and peas nearly done. So what I'm going to do, just, again, the fork test. So stick a fork in it and it's done. So take out a wee carrot. The peas will be done. When the peas rise to the top of the pan like that, you know they're done. And the carrots, you just want to be able to stick a fork to glide through it and then come out. So they're pretty much done. Carrots are quite subjective. I quite like, oh. Sorry. I quite like my carrots with a bit of a bite in them. I think that comes from years of eating. My mum used to really overcook carrots. So since graduating to be able to cook on my own rather than my mum cooking for me, which in many ways is a shame, but I actually now really like my carrots with quite a bite in them rather than really mushy. So it's completely up to you. Stick a fork in them till they're done to your liking. That's what I would say this is all about, is making sure everything is to your liking, because you'll find that cooking becomes much easier when you follow a recipe, but you realise that it's all within your choice as to how much or little you cook something or season something or how you cut it, and all these sorts of things are completely your choice, and that's how you make the recipe your own. So, yeah, do as you will. I am going to drain my carrots now still with a bit of bite in them, because fortunately that's how I like them. Right, so again, I'm just going to do this off camera so I don't create loads of steam. So if you just do it over a sink, get yourself a sieve or colander and then just drain them over a sink. And then they're ready to serve. Beautiful. Okay, we're good to go, guys. So, serving spoon. I feel like I'm not as organised as usual today. Apologies. So we've made enough today to feed 4. So serve it as you will. I have allowed for a good helping of mash because, as I said, I'm a mash lover. So please don't scrimp on the mash. We've got 8 sausages, so that allows for 2 sausages each. There we go. Look delicious. Sausages, hot dogs, I should say, really. Mine are sausages, but yours are hot dogs, whichever you like. And then a generous portion, where's my spoon, of veggies as well. Veggies make this. So don't scrimp on your veggies either. Like I say, they don't have to be carrots and peas. They can be any veggie you please. You get some really nice mixed veg, actually. Frozen mixed veg these days, so you can do whichever you like. I'm just going to move them around so they look a bit nice and plate. Add a wee bit more peas. There we go. Make sure you get enough veg on the plate because it does just sort of bring it all together. And then, last but certainly not least, a good helping of gravy. So again, completely your choice in terms of whether the gravy just goes over the sausages and veg, whether it goes over the mash, whichever is your way of eating that. But that, to me, looks like the ultimate comfort food. That looks like a delicious Saturday evening dinner for me, and I cannot wait to duck into it. I hope you managed to cook along with me today okay. I'm conscious that I was a little bit fast at points where everything sort of got cooked together at one time there. And I hope you didn't mind the guest appearance of my doggy. If you've got any questions, then please do message me, and I look forward to cooking again with you next month. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.